I'm on the podcast because you're my friends. Okay. And I'm just sharing what I'm sharing because it's sort of a long, sort of transformational story. And it's, I guess explaining some of who I am today.
Hey guys, welcome to the breakdown.
Hey Megan, how's it going?
It is actually going really well. Really well. It was a weird day, but we're all here now, and I'm super psyched that you and I have our dear friend Sam Farnsworth with us today.
Hey guys.
Hey Sam.
Hey.
Good to be with you.
Welcome. So John, when did you meet Sam? Because I met him at your house.
That's when I met Sam.
When we all got together for run camp. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you know Sam before?
I didn't. Well, I knew of Sam because Fernando, our mutual friend, had we ran a race a couple of months before we had everybody at my house, and he spent the entire time talking about Sam and Sophia. So it was good to finally put a face with the names.
And Sophia's your youngest daughter, correct?
That's right. Right.
Yeah.
That was COVID run camp, right?
It was. It absolutely was. It was the first run camp we had in a while, but yeah, it was weird. We had porta toilets at my house and everything else.
But what's interesting is that we are such a whack bunch. And for you and your daughter to come in, join us, and just fit in like you've always been there. I mean, it's like, yeah, I feel like I've known you for much longer than I have. And I should also mention that Sam coaches for ZenduranceNow. He's a great coach, has his own business, and is a phenomenal storyteller, I think. You've got great life experience.
I certainly have some of that. Yes. Yeah. A few more years than either of you two. So you tend to accumulate these things.
Yeah. So here, what we want to do is Sam, you're a very cool person. Okay. You're very chill. You're very level-headed. But we've seen you angry. So we know you have emotions. We've seen you sad, but for the most part, you're really like even keeled and you're a grounded individual. And what I think is cool about you is there's been an evolution of Sam over the years. And we only know this grounded individual that fit well into this wacky friend group that we have, right? I know a little bit about your story. And what I find interesting is that, according to what you've told us, about 15 to 20 years ago, you had a major life change because you weren't always a massage therapist. You weren't always a coach. You weren't always doing what you're doing. Your background was initially much different than what your life looks like today. So do you want to talk to us about how you changed your life and why? Because it sounds like you were super successful on the surface. Everything was going great. You got this wonderful family, great job, but it changed.
Yep. Yeah. I'm happy to share that. And there probably is a few threads to it, and probably a few more threads will sort of appear as I jump into this, but feel free to jump in and, help me along if I need it or whatever. But
that's what we do.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I think that, I'm thinking back maybe, I can't exactly pin it down, but it was probably, in the 2000s, the aughts, somewhere, the latter half of those, maybe a little later than that. And so I have two daughters, and They at that time would have been like, oh, maybe let's say 12 and 15, something like that, maybe a little older than that. Maybe, yeah, the catalyst pieces start around 14 and 17, maybe. Um, and at that time, I was, I was, I was starting sort of a second career in endurance sports. I had come out of like 2002, I had herniated two discs in my back and was basically took me about a year to recover from that. And guess very slowly I started swimming and then biking. And so that got me back into sports. And I'll probably have a little more to say about that later. But but I was working at, yeah, a pretty committed professional at that point, standard professional. I was working for a consulting company, and we were an environmental consultancy. So we were, permitting new construction, air emissions. We were in the group that I came up through, we were investigating and remediating hazardous waste sites. So Superfund sites, state Superfund sites. I have a geologist background. I also have a business degree. I have bachelor's in both. And that was from a previous change. But I had ended up, and I think this was by, when somebody asks a group of people to volunteer and everybody take a steps backwards and one person is left standing there in the front. I sort of recall it that way, but I ended up managing these group of offices in New England, and there was one here in Massachusetts, one in Maine, one in New York, and then I think a little satellite office in Rhode Island. And so like 120 people, four offices. And somewhere around then I became a vice president with the company, so a principal in the company. And so I was loaded up with all this stuff, all of these, two girls, teenagers trying to do some endurance stuff, in my spare time and work, where I was traveling certainly to every office every month and around the country for different things as well. So
it sounds like you were like living the dream.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah, maybe. I thought it was the dream, maybe at that time. I thought that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, so I was be successful from the professional standpoint, and I think the beginning of it. I don't know. There were a couple of strands that I don't recall exactly how these things were, how they all overlapped. But I was managing this group, but I also had come up and I had my own clients. They were with CSX, the freight railroad, and these guys were. It was always the railroad works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's no time off. And so when they'd call with something that needed paying attention to, you had jumped. And so they worked hard and then they played hard. And so that was the client piece of things. There was the management piece of things and the family piece of things. And some of the play hard stuff was definitely drinking pretty hard, out there. And, I remember, party till 3 or 4 in the morning, then be up for a 7 o'clock meeting, to get the day started. And
that's visceral for me. John, do you feel that too? Like, I know that feeling, like when, oh God.
I've had the luxury of living that corporate travel lifestyle, and it is just, I think I got hungover just listening to that story, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I saw the nodding heads, but anyways, there was, I just remember one day being like, or sitting in my office doing something, and I'm like, oh, I got to remember to do this thing. And I had this feeling like something left my brain on the other side of my head, you know? And I had this experience that I was like, all right, you've reached maximum capacity in your brain here. And every time from now on, when you add something here, you don't know what is going to fall out the other side, but something's going to fall out the other side because you have no more capacity, you know? And I don't know if that's what it feels like to be an adult, but, you know, it was
I get
just
that. Visceral number two. Yeah, I know. I get that. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I'm so used to it now. I mean, I don't even care what I'm falling out the other side anymore, but, I just was very conscious of it. And there was something in me, I think at that point, I recall like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to stop drinking coffee for a while, for like the first time ever as an adult. And for like 6 months, I just drank tea. And of course, the first 3 weeks were horrible with headaches and everything. But, you know, so that sort of brought my ambient, you know, anxiety level down a little bit, you know, and just trying to look at ways to managing what it meant to be an adult, I guess, at that point, or all the various responsibilities. And
Were you happy?
you would have to ask my wife about that, I think. You know, I would tell you I thought I was happy.
Mm.
You know, I was successful. And but I think I was kind of living out what my father would have wanted me to do. So by that yardstick, I think I was, you know, satisfied. Um, yeah, but you know, I definitely had my moments. I loved my family and being with them, and I loved the sports piece of it. And I had some good friends within the organization. I also had some people, I was managing people that were much smarter than me in this consultancy, many PhDs. I was in an office that had the US manager, the sub regional, like the Eastern US manager, and then I was a local. So I had two levels above me. And when some of these senior people didn't like what I was saying, they would go and talk to these other folks who they were friends with, you know, beforehand. So it fed all kinds of insecurities too in that way. So it was a mixed feeling for me at that time. I was happy to be where I did. I thought I did a good job, but I just had the feeling there were some, you know, other strings being pulled around me that I never knew about, you know. And so that was a drag. But you know, you can never have everything at once, I guess, you know.
Right. Right.
There's always something.
I call that corporate contentment, right? You're checking the boxes. You're probably
Right.
where you want to be. You're probably doing something you like on some level, but it's not the type of happiness that you get with your family in doing the things that you love, like endurance
Right.
sports. So it's kind of a different kind of happy.
Yeah, I mean, I was professionally satisfied, you know, and but um but it was, you know, it was I'm remembering now like a series of things um that that happened, you know, so in consulting you're only as good as, you know, you're only as good as what you did for me yesterday, you know, not what you did for me a year ago, not what you did for me 10 years ago. And um, and so I was managing our office and we were wrapped up. You know, we had been trying for years to diversify. We had 50% of our revenue was coming from one job. And, you know, it was, you know, keeping 60 people busy. And you try and diversify from that. Anyways, it takes a while to do it. So um, I got, I think this was the beginning of, there's a whole series of things that start overlapping here. So we lost 75% of that contract overnight from the Army Corps. They decided at the first of the year to reallocate funds somewhere else. And so that impacted a third of the people and more than close to half the people in. And so then you have to start managing that, cutting people, doing these things. And I remember my boss comes down the hall eventually, a month or two later. He goes, "So what are you going to do to replace this?" I'm like, "Dude, it's like a 3-year sales cycle to replace this kind of thing, He's like, "Yeah, but we got to make the budget for the year." And I'm like, "We're not going to make the budget for the year, we're not, there's no way." And he and I just had this like insane, completely illogical conversation. And I'm like, "What are you going to do to help me?" "Well, it's your problem, And so I got really, really fucking pissed off. And eventually they came and they said, "You're no longer the manager of these." Became the scapegoat. And there had to be some change for something farther up the line. And they said, "We want you here. We like what you do for the railroad, but we don't want you. You can't manage these offices anymore because of this financial issue." I'm like, furious. And so I left the company. I thought about it for 2 months. I talked with my mentor there, and I just couldn't get over being angry. And I left the company, and because I was pissed off at this management being scapegoated, and they all knew the circumstances that this happened overnight. So got another good job. A friend of mine left with me, actually, and we started over in a new company. And that was, it's a challenge to find your way in any new company. But I think, so I'll put the business stuff aside for a minute, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys still with me and everything?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I'm hanging on. I'm hanging on the story.
So the other thing, stuff starts to go sideways in my personal life, with my family. My younger daughter had a close group of friends. She was riding horses. I'd be very lucky to be able to do that and afford that. One day, all of the girls in the barn decided they didn't want to be friends with her anymore. And this, she just kind of left her without any friends because she'd spent all of her time there.
Sam, how old was she? Sorry.
She was 14, maybe 15.
Oh, the worst possible age, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so she started to, I don't remember the exact chronology of this because this is when I get total nervous system overload. Mm-hmm. She goes through a series of high schools, getting kicked out or not wanting to be there, trying to find connection somewhere, and ends up at one school and with kids that are 3 years older than her that are seniors, and she's hanging out with them and partying and disappearing at nights, disappearing for a couple days. And so that starts to be we went through about 6 months of this. She went to, I think, cycled through 5 different high schools at that time.
Wow.
And we ultimately intervened, had her move to North Carolina to a therapeutic wilderness program. And she was there for 3 months and sort of got sober, got no devices. She lived in the woods for 3 months from February to May in the Appalachians in North Carolina, and then came back and went to a therapeutic boarding school and got her mostly sort of certainly reconnected with us. So that was good.
But this was all happening while you
trying to sort out a new career.
massive hit in your career, to your ego. And, for those that have kids, God, when one of your kids is miserable, I was trying to think of a more profound way to say it, but it makes you miserable. It's like the visual I have in my head is like, hanging off the edge of a building, and you're just trying to hold on just so everybody can be okay.
Yeah, I mean, to your point there, Megan, I've had 2 times in my life where I was so upset, meaning just upset in the sense of feeling completely helpless and completely like have no traction anywhere to move forward, like completely immobilized. And one of them happened, with my second child during this period of time when she made some comment that I misconstrued, it turned out, but that made me really scared for her, what was going to happen with her. And I was just curled up in a ball crying and, just completely. So, yeah, I mean, they have this power over you.
Yeah, they do.
And,
they do.
And, there's nothing for those of us with kids, can't really explain it to folks that don't have kids. It's like you can't love anything more, I don't think, than how you love your kids. And you can't be concerned for anything more than the concern you have for your kids,
When I had my first child, one thing that my father said to me, and he's come out with these little bits of wisdom, a couple times in my life, but this really stuck with me. It was after my son was born, first child, and he said the thing about being a parent is, he said, the joy you're going to experience is going to be like nothing you could ever even wrap your head around. He said it's going to be the most magnificent that you can ever imagine. He goes, however, the pain you're going to feel when your child hurts is deeper than you can imagine. He goes, it goes both ways, and just always know that what you feel in the extremes of what you feel is just heightened by this person that just came into the world. And
Yep. Yeah, that says it perfectly. So, so I'm, for at least a year in here, because it's all the shit that we were going through with her that led to sending her away, and then her being away and missing her terribly. And then, there's some transition stuff that, but anyways, so lots of stuff to deal with. And my older daughter was in college maybe at the beginning of this, but at this point, or started college. And so trying to keep her connected with, she's like, what the fuck is going on, and
it's affecting all of you in different ways.
Yeah. And then, so we got, that ran its course. Now where the girls say the girls are fast forward and they're maybe 17 and 19. And my older daughter had switched schools. She didn't go, she was at Eastern Connecticut State her first year. And I think she came home for a semester, went to the Mass Bay Community College, and then ended up at Endicott up in the North Shore. And no, I think before she even went there, she got pregnant with the guy that she had been out with like 5 times, So
it's just what you needed in your life.
And she came home and she's like, wow. I'm keeping the baby. And we're like, okay.
All right.
I remember her leaving the room and my wife turned to me and she says, we made out a bed on the bus. but we have to get on the bus right now
Wow.
and support her. And
that's super wise of your wife.
Oh, it was.
I mean, in a moment like that, when your head wants to explode, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
She was, thank God she was, she saw that so immediately. And because that was not going to be my reaction for things, but I knew immediately that she was right. So I don't know. So this all fairly, this has happened within like 3 years or so. And I think would cause anybody to sort of evaluate their priorities with things. And certainly the family is super important. We had to pay all this attention to Sophia when my youngest, when she was dealing with this. And then we had to pay attention to Maria, my oldest, when she came home and she's pregnant. And we fortunately, I think we spent all of the money we ever had during this time. But fortunately, we had some resources to be able to do that. And I know that's not true for other, we went to the camp where Sophie went, and, some parents are like, well, we had a college fund, but that's all gone because we wanted our kid to, make it till next week, and so it kind of shifts your priorities. And
it sounds like a slow burn, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had from an ego standpoint, I think I had a little bit of a hard time letting go of things in my professional world. But it was interesting, when I got pissed off there, I left the company for 2 years. And then when I realized, like, oh, I have all these friends back at the other company that I really liked working with and that I really trusted. And I'm having to figure that all out again in this new place. Who can you rely on and who do you? And I didn't take that into account when I left in the first place. And I went back to the company that, and the management that had been there before was gone, which helped me. But I went back to work with these friends, and I said, I'll come back, but I don't want to manage anybody. I want to focus on my clients. I just want to do my work and do that stuff. And so that was good because then I could manage the rest of my life more easily. And but that, I don't know. And I think that leads somewhere in there. After that, somewhere in there, I get very into endurance sports, and I'm pouring myself into that. And
were they helping you cope? Because they did. I mean, I know they have for me when I've been in super stressful times. It may not be the best coping mechanism, but knowing that I could control a run or a bike ride or a swim, it kind of gave me a means to an end. It beat drinking, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I got into it. I kind of fell into it after my injury with my back originally because I started from that. I started swimming, and then I was like, because running was going to be the last thing I was going to do after the pain I had. And so I started swimming, and that went good. And then I wasn't as scared. I started biking, but I'm like, I can't mountain bike anymore because I don't want to be flying over the handlebars in the woods. That's not going to be good for my. So I'm riding on the road, and then I'm like, all right, maybe I'll try running. And all right, I'm not hurting. And so that dumped me right into triathlon. And I think Meghan, and this is, I don't think I ever thought about this kind of thing before, but I think you subconsciously find these things to take care of yourself. And it definitely, I would have told you, oh, this is something I never thought I could do, and now I'm doing it. But I think it was completely it was stress management, and it was
what about it was stress management?
Control and structure
Okay.
and all of that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because at 5:30 in the morning, I'd go to the pool and I'd swim. And then after work, I'd get on the bike and I'd do the, and in the wintertime, I'd get on the trainer for 6 hours on Sunday morning and watch 2 Premier League games and ride, 100 miles and all this crazy, crazy stuff.
And what's interesting, and I know the end of your story. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna ruin that, but it sounds like you have a lot going on in your life, and more was thrown onto it from our kids, which is what they do, right?
Yep.
And then you put more into it with triathlon. So I still hear you bringing more stuff into your life. And I imagine you did, and I know a little bit about your triathlons, but you did well. You were performing well. And I'm wondering if performing is, were you living well or were you performing well?
I think I was trying to live well, Yeah. I don't know how healthy it was. Certainly obsessive, and providing some positive feedback, for things that maybe I, and ego boost, and that's the piece, the whole ego piece of it. I can't objectively comment on it. I mean, it's definitely there. I don't like to acknowledge that it's there, but it's
Sam,
definitely there. And
let me interrupt you for a second. I think just in watching you tell this story, you took a lot of hits. And this sport that could be, the more you control it, the better you do. And you get that ego boost. It sounds like you really needed that at that point in your life. Like you started doing well again. And initially it was the 4 offices and managing 120 people. But you downsize that a little bit. And now you're doing really well in triathlon. And that's a lot. As somebody who's, John and I both understand what it means to train and do triathlons. It's a lot, and it's very controlled. It's probably the most controlled training I've done. But you downsized in one area and upsized in another.
Yeah.
And
that's
your
where
ego got a nice boost.
Well, that's where I'm saying, I think unconsciously you find these things that you need somehow. And I'm only becoming aware of that stuff. And
it sounds like it was just what you needed at the time. That was what you could handle.
Yeah. Well, it was probably more.
Were you going out and were you going out and doing these things and not thinking about all the stuff happening? Or were you going out and doing these things and working through the stuff that was happening in your brain?
I think it's a physical release of the physical toll that the stress takes. So, relax, tire your body out so, you can get to a relaxation point. And a mental kind of the goal was oblivion, is to not feel anything, or maybe feel a little bit of discomfort from running, but not be thinking about stuff and then be processing the physical piece of it.
Gotcha.
And I'm
hearing John Mellencamp in the back of my head, like that hurts so good. And I'm not making a joke, but when you just get that little bit of, well, it's a lot of pain when you do a triathlon, but it's almost like a stim, right? And that, at least in my experience, when I get a little bit of discomfort and I can just hold on to it and I can steady in there and perform well, boom, look what I did with that, right?
You earned that discomfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. yeah, and it's, the discomfort can be amorphous. It can move around. It can, it could be physical one day. It could be the heat, or it could be, I I think it's growing up with a father who was only happy or angry, and a mother who was like, she was Yankee to the bone, so stoic. And it's a way to practice managing your discomfort, and still, keeping a happy face to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, in some ways, and in taking it to an extreme, doing what I was conditioned to do. And
So what?
sorry, it's recent therapy in the last year
No,
and a
it's
half
great.
has
No,
me
no,
looking
it's
at
great,
all
John.
of this stuff.
I think it's, yeah, no, I think John and I, you could probably tell by our nods, we're really,
Yep.
no, you're spot on, and you're a good storyteller. I'm wondering what changed? Why? Because again, I know the end of the story, and so does John, because we know you today. But what changed for you? Did this stop working? Did what? What was the that word catalyst keeps coming up with us, but what was the what? Because it sounds like you were managing. I'm using that word deliberately. It sounds like you were managing quite well, given everything that was going on.
I think so. Now this is spanning a longer time frame than I realized when we started. It's probably 10 years or so, but um, so this is just Sam's perception. It's not any kind of an objective assessment, but triathlon is kind of a unique world, and the people, they talk about type A's, people that are very intense, and I would say there's a greater percentage of very type A people in triathlon. Very high achievers, very successful people, and I was definitely part of that. But I realized at some point that it just kind of socially maybe exhausted me to be around this. And maybe again it was a period of 6 or 7 or 8 years of dealing either with emotional highs or a lot of emotion and responsibility, or now physical stuff and everything else in your life. But I got tired of it. And that was when I started to be like, looking at my drinking and being like, all right, I don't need to drink as much as I'm drinking. Looking at and when I started to dabble with trail running, and I'm like, oh, a bunch of dirty hippies in the woods. Yeah, that's right. That's what I liked to do when I was a kid. When I was backpacking and hiking and stuff, and when I was growing up, and I was like, this is much more. This vibe brings everything down, and like I was in a race, one of my first races, and I remember I was trying to go fast and I cut in front of this guy and he stumbled and he turned his ankle, and I was like, what? And like 12 people stopped and were like, are you okay? What can we do? Can we help? And like, I'm like, that would never happen in a triathlon, And and I even saw the guy later on, it was a lap race or something. And I'm like, are you, he's like, yeah, man, I'm cool. No problem. Take it. No, no problem. And, so I don't know. I think my nervous system just kind of, it started with that sort of that realization of things falling out the other side, but that wasn't enough to, I had to go through obviously now several more years of just loading things up. And so I, that transition to trail running definitely helped to sort of moderate things a little bit. It didn't moderate things in terms of distance or it's just
and
another.
were you still in the corporate job, or I
was in the corporate job until 2019.
Okay.
But so now we've reached, in 2018, I have been very lucky with my wife. We've had this great partnership where at age 30, I think I was just married to her, maybe. I had been taking classes. I had gotten very interested in my late 20s in climate change, and I was in manufacturing originally, and couldn't stand that job. And I started taking classes at night, and eventually I said to her, can I go to school for environmental science? And she's like, sure. And I worked it out so I could get another bachelor's in 2 years if I went through the summer. So I worked for a year with that. And the next year, of course, perfect Farnsworth planning. We had a baby. Yeah, anyways, I'm jumping all over the place now on you guys.
No, we're with you.
So I did this first, went back to college, career change at 30 and 32. When the girls were in high school, in the middle of all this shit, was writing a book of poetry that she eventually got published. She took 5 years off to do that. So, and then in 2018, went to school for massage. And that was kind of the culmination of this sort of 10 years of turbulence and sort of exiting the corporate world, stripping everything out.
Why massage? How do you go from environmental science to massage?
Because for 30 years, massage and chiropractic had kept me going from my years in the 90s as a mountain biker through triathlon and I really liked my massage therapist and would talk, I was just curious about it.
You believed
I did, for sure. Yeah. And the way I do it, it's another scientific, it's more of an orthopedic approach that I take. And so there's an anatomical, it still works with my science brain. And, and so, but it wasn't an intellectual, it was a heart directed decision to do that. It wasn't necessarily an intellectual thing. It was just like, I just feel that this is what I want to do and move towards it. Yeah, it's just happens to match up intellectually too. But so anyways, that's the rest of the story from there, essentially. But big, long kind of rambling story there.
But notice, John, he's like, oh yeah, you guys know the story, right? You in our circle, right? And John, help me out with this. Like, you have your extremes. You're very human. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll yell, but you are a person that we all look to as a very stable individual. I don't know if you realize that. But what I hear in your story is a lot of instability. I mean, maybe it's, a lot of it's brought on by other people. Some of it was internal. Some of it was left over from the way you were raised. When you finally started finding alignment, right? And no pun intended when I said that. When you finally started finding like alignment with just getting out into the woods, being a massage therapist, accepting what's going on with your kids, because it sounds like that's what you did. You had to just really accept where these girls were. You couldn't change it. We can't change our kids as much as we want to, right? When you started taking steps in the direction of the Sam we know today, what did it feel like? Did it feel uncomfortable? Did it feel like a relief? What did that feel or look like?
I mean, along the way, it's been everything. It's been agonizingly painful. It's been, but at the end, ultimately, like a complete relief to sort of be. I think, what is it? Is it the Maslow hierarchy of needs? With the self-actualization piece at the top. A little more alignment. I mean, I don't claim to be anything unusual, but I think one thing that's ruled everything in my adult life is short. Don't do something you don't want to do. Okay. And
but it sounds like it took you until age 40 to really start to just even begin to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue going back to school at 30 was the first thing that I did. Yeah. I think I forfeited some of those decisions in my late teens and 20s to the wishes of my parents. And I think once I did that in my 30s, I was more assertive about that. And but I've had to give up a lot of things that I thought were right, or I thought were the way to do. Maybe the only thing that I have at this point in my life is the realization that there's so many more options to do any one thing than I ever thought possible. That I can only visualize a kernel of the options to do anything. And I just appreciate that there's all these other things out there. There's all these other opinions and all these other ideas. Like with my kids, with my youngest who never graduated high school after 7 high schools, and but went on to in COVID finish her bachelor's degree, and now runs her own business. And and my oldest who also took a very twisty, turny path with a daughter in college, and she's a great mom. And the guy that got her pregnant, they're still together 16 years later. So and I never would have envisioned these things 10 or 15 years ago. So I think I'm just, it's taken me a long time to open up to the many possibilities. And I have a few years on YouTube, so I'm just a little more serene in being curious about what are your ideas? What are your possibilities? Where are you going? What's, trying to be open to everything. And
do you have? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask. Do you have regret or things that you look back on that you really just wished you'd done differently? Or is this the path that you needed to be on, or it could be both?
In terms of my life, I think it's just what I had to do to get to where I am today. And I am glad that I did make some significant decisions and was assertive about making those decisions. And my only regrets, honestly, that I might have is with, at times, some interactions with my wife, of almost 40 years at this point. So that's probably the one place where I wish I could have been a little more detached about things 20 years ago or whatever. or yesterday, you know?
It sounds like you were, it sounds like you were in the, both. You were both in the middle of learning, is what I hear.
Oh yeah, but you know, we also become best at hurting the people closest to us. And I think, and and oftentimes inadvertently. And that's the place. That's that's probably the biggest regrets that I would have is to not be able to not have a little more self control or self awareness with those things.
I have one more question. Well, maybe I have more than one question, but what do you do today to, because we see you as a very genuine human being, and I think you are. I think, you know, it's safe to say that you are who you are, right? What do you do to stay true to yourself, to stay in your own skin? Because life pulls at us. You know, you got to have this, you got to have that, you have to be faster. We got to do. How do you stay in your own skin and remain true to yourself?
Well, I think what you can do is try to give yourself a few more tools to stay closer to that. I think it's, you know, you get, like you say, you get pulled at that. And, you know, for me, um, it slowly worked its way out of my life, but I don't drink anymore. And, you know, that's an obvious way to not be in your skin. And it was, and that's how I used it, was to get out of my skin, to be more social. But I also did a lot of stupid things. I I picked up meditation actually just at the start of COVID, so I'm going on a little over 5 years now. And the first thing that sort of that clicked with me with meditation was it helped in my communications with my wife. It helped me to have like to just take a beat before you reply. Just take a, and I can't do that every time, but if I can in a conversation think, okay, just whatever she says, just take a second to think about it before you reply. And it's still a work in progress, but um, it definitely helps me. And and then I think just for me, there's nothing better than being in the woods. And so that is um, that grounds me more than anything. Is just whether I'm walking in the woods, taking a walk with somebody else, out in the rain, in the snow, anything, you know, just hearing the birds, hearing the crunch of the leaves, you know, whatever. And I do that every day. I have to do it every day. And and then I alluded to it earlier. I'm late to this in my life, but my wife and I have been in couples counseling for 3 years now, and after 3 years, it's finally starting to get substantive, and it's good. It's a great neutral place to sort your shit out. And I'm seeing a therapist on my own for the last year, and so understanding where some of your behaviors come from is the biggest utility in that for me. And you know, some of that's shit that's happened to me in my lifetime. Some of that is just how you were. A lot of it is just how you were raised. And I'm not telling Meghan anything new here, as it's part of her career. But
Well,
so those are the. I mean, these days, those are the things that are working for me, and those are all subject to change too. Oh, and live music. Live
oh
music is a
gosh,
big good
yes.
thing too.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's funny though. I often joke with people that I work with, do as I say, not as I do, right? Like it's so easy. And just think about it in the athletic sense when we're training people. And by the way, physicality is easy compared to the emotional and higher level stuff we're talking about.
It's so much easier.
Yeah. And just because we know it doesn't mean we're living it. And just because we can do it doesn't mean we're actually living it. It goes back to that performance that you were mentioning in regard to, corporate life and triathlon. Like you're doing great, life is good, but something just doesn't feel right,
Right.
And the more, it sounds like the more comfortable, well, let me see how to, I want to make sure I say this right to do justice to what you just said. The more at peace you became with life on life's terms, I don't know that it was easier, but it just became more clear where you fell into your own life. Maybe I think probably, and I don't know, maybe I'm just talking in a super convoluted way, but it's super easy to be fake. Right? It's super easy to perform. It's easy to be angry. It's easy but when you have to sit in your own skin and be present with your wife or be present with your kids when you don't like the decisions that they're making, or be humbled at work when you lose a job after incredible success, that's life. Right?
Oh yeah. That's what one of my therapists says now. He goes, one thing people never tell you is shit just keeps coming at you. That's what life is. And nobody ever tells you that. It never stops, And I'm like, finally, somebody that knows what I'm feeling,
But the more we feel the crappy stuff, it opens us up on the flip side to all the wonderful stuff. Like if you weren't able to feel the crappy stuff, I don't know that you could go outside and really take in like, oh my gosh, it's a cold, miserable day, but look how beautiful it is. And there's birds chirping and just gratitude for being able to get outside every day, right? Can't have one without the other. It would be nice to be happy all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's definitely the yin and the yang, but and I'm myself very lucky, at this point. So it's, it definitely.
The answer is in the woods with the dirty hippies.
Hey, you found us.
I'm with you, John.
Yep.
That's
there
right.
It is. There's the theme right there.
The answer is in the woods.
Yeah. Well, I really want to express huge gratitude. I appreciate you for who you are, genuinely, and I'm so glad that you fell into our circle. At John's house. How many years ago did we decide that was?
That was I think it was September 2020. So we're going on.
Jeez.
It's over 5 at this point. Yeah.
Thanks. So it's in as I grow up, right? You've also been a role model. And I often talk about, I literally call this the Sam Farnsworth method of training, and I use it on myself. And I've used that method like to be more gentle with myself. Like I still push myself. I'm always going to, it's part of who I am, but you can't push all the time. There are some days when I've learned I have to listen to my body. And that's really what Sam Farnsworth method has taught all of us, that coach in ZenduranceNow, right? Because all of us just want to go, and we want to do well, but you can't do that all the time. That's not real.
No.
So
no.
Yeah.
No. Well, I appreciate you two having me on here to, have a forum.
And if people want to find you, if they want to see you, for massage, healing, coaching, where do we find you?
It's everything this is all run together. It's Sam Farnsworth with an N, LMT, Sam Farnsworth LMT. That's on social media. It's my website.
And you're in Western Mass.
I am in sort of Easternish Mass, Central
Okay,
Eastern
all right.
Mass. Yeah.
Okay.
John's out
Okay.
west. John's
Okay,
out
all
in the
right.
wild, wild west.
The Wild West. Yep. With the rest of the dirty hippies.
I'm up north.
Yep.
You guys are all, down south.
That's right.
So, and have you seen any live music lately? What was the last concert you went to?
Last concert I went to was Dark Star Orchestra, which
Ooh.
was, a Grateful Dead cover band. They're cool. They're unique is they'll play a whole show from some point in history. And
where'd you see them?
I saw that they played at the Orpheum. They sold out the Orpheum, so pretty good draw. And then I've been seeing a lot of bluegrass this fall. So
Cool.
But yeah, there's always the next show, I think, is the Felice Brothers, which is a New York City band, which you should check out in the end of December. And then, more bluegrass in January. So
nice. Nice. Well, thanks for being part of our world. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.